Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me today. My name is James Ziegra. I'm an attorney at the Disability Rights Center here in Concord. I handed out some toolkits earlier, and I also have some information about our office over there. Basically, we're a small law firm that helps out people with disabilities if they're being discriminated against because of their disability. So if you guys have any questions afterwards, I'd be happy to talk with you about what our office does. But today I'm here to talk about voting and voting rights because there is an election coming up in less than a month. So I'm going to talk about why it's important to vote, how to register to vote, different ways to vote, and how you can make a plan to vote. So the first thing I want to highlight is this voting toolkit. It's also available online. It's a really good resource. It has a lot of the information that I'm going to be talking about today in it. But if you'd like it and you want to share it with other people, you can go online to our website and send them the link, and that would be wonderful. So first thing I want to ask is how many people here are 18 years old? All right, and almost 18. So does anybody know there are 3 requirements to vote in the United States? Does anybody know what one of them is? Yes.
You have to be a U.S. citizen, you need to be 18.
You have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to be 18 years old.
Don't know the last one.
And the last one is, anybody? The last one is you have to live in the town or the city where you're going to vote. So if you live in Concord, you can't go and vote in Manchester. You have to vote where you live. So those are basically the 3 requirements. Other than that, anybody can vote as long as they're over 18 years old. If somebody has a guardian, a legal guardian, say you're over 18 and one of your parents goes to court and they decide that they want a guardianship over you, guess what? You can still vote. Having a disability does not prevent anybody from voting, and the law is very clear about that. So a guardian cannot take away your right to vote. So if they say, you know what, I'm your guardian, I don't want you voting, please call our office. We'll be happy to talk with you and make sure that you're able to access the ballot on voting day. Does anybody know why it's important to vote? Any ideas? Yes?
Most of the time it's on public opinion, but it's usually your own.
Yeah, it's a way to express your opinion and how you feel about the way that our government should run. And it's not just for the presidency. I mean, there's a big election coming up next month that's for president. But after that, there's going to be elections for a lot of things, like the mayor of Concord, the people on the school board, the city council. And they make a lot of rules that affect you just as much as maybe some of the president's decisions do, maybe sometimes even more. So it's really important to be able to vote because you can exercise your own power and you can be powerful yourself. Now, if people are able to vote in New Hampshire, I talked about just a minute ago, you got to be 18, you got to be a U.S. citizen, you got to live in the town that you're going to vote in. What if you can't really talk too good? What if you have a communication disability? Can you still vote? If, say, you're nonverbal? Yes, you sure can. All you have to do is be able to signal to somebody that you're able to make a choice, one way or the other. Even if you don't speak English, even if you don't communicate, verbally, you can still do that. All you have to do is you can blink your eyes. 1 blink for yes, 2 blinks for no. As long as you can signal that you're able to make a choice, that's the only requirement in the state to vote. So, I asked who was 18, is anybody here registered to vote? Nobody, okay. So, this is an important part. If you want to register to vote, you can do it a couple different ways. One way is to register at City Hall in Concord or whatever town that you live in. You go there and you have to bring, proof of ID and proof of citizenship and proof that you live where you say where you live. Right now, if you don't have proof of citizenship, which is like a birth certificate or a passport, if you don't have that, you can sign what's called an affidavit ballot, an affidavit form, which basically says, I promise that I am a U.S. citizen, and I promise that I'm going to tell the truth, and you can show them at a later time all the proper documentation. So that law changed, but you don't need to worry about that right now. So for this election, you can register up to, I would say, about a week before the election on November 5th at City Hall or at Town Hall, wherever you live. The other place you can register to vote, say it's election day and you realize, oh geez, I didn't register to vote. You know what you could do? You can go to the polling place and you can register on election day. So what you do is you would bring the same documents that you would normally bring to City Hall, and they'll sign you right up, and they'll give you your ballot, and you can vote on election day itself. You can register and vote the same day. All right, so does anybody know what absentee voting is, or what you would do if you're not going to be in town on election day, or if you're not going to be able to vote for whatever reason? Say you don't have a ride to the polls. Yes.
Are you going to answer the question you just told everybody?
If you want to answer, that would be fine too.
There is a remote version of the ballot, and you can also you can mail a ballot as well.
You can mail a ballot as well. Yep, it's called absentee voting. We don't have. Yep. So we don't have online voting in this state. We use paper ballots in New Hampshire. So there's very, very limited exceptions of when you'd be able to be emailed a ballot. But if you're not able to make it to the polling place on election day, what you can do is you can ask your city clerk or your town clerk for an absentee ballot, and they'll mail you one. Or you can go to City Hall, fill it out right there, boom, and you voted already. So those ballots are available now. So if you're interested in vote, we don't have early voting in New Hampshire formally, but what you can do is you can request an absentee ballot. You can mark it in the form and say, I'm not going to be here on election day. The clerk will give you a ballot. You fill it out, you give it back to the clerk, and you're done. You voted, and you don't have to worry about it. It's pretty easy, pretty simple process. But the big thing, if you're not going to be able to make it to the polling place on election day, is that an absentee ballot is not going to be sent to you automatically. You're going to have to ask for one. Sometimes people think that they're just going to mail me a ballot. If you call up the city clerk and say, hey, could you mail me a ballot? They're probably not going to do it. What they can do is they can mail you the information for you to request a ballot, but they're not going to mail you a ballot until you fill out a form and turn that in. Does that make sense to everybody?
And how much ahead do you have to do that ahead of time?
You do have to do it ahead of time. So you can request an absentee ballot at any point, but you can, as long as they receive it by 5 p.m. on election day, your ballot is going to count. And if it's the day before the election, you can still request an absentee ballot. The clerk's office is going to be open late the day before the election. They're going to be by law, they have to be open until 7 p.m. the day before. So if you are going to vote by absentee and you are going to plan on mailing your ballot in instead of turning it in person, I'd recommend that you do it really early. Mail's really slow. And if your ballot is not at the polling place by 5 p.m. on election day, your vote is not going to count. And that'd be a shame, because you went to all that trouble to register to vote, you filled out your ballot, and you want to vote, but if they don't get it in time, it's just not going to count. So if you register to vote and you request an absentee ballot and you mail it in, one of the cool things in New Hampshire is you can track your ballot online. The Secretary of State's office has, and this is in the toolkit, the address for the website, the Secretary of State's office has you can put in your name and your date of birth, and it will pop up and show what the status of your ballot is. So it will say that they have, a ballot has been mailed to you, or that your ballot has been received. So you can know that, okay, yep, we took care of everything. So if you get an absentee ballot, you don't mail it until like the Sunday before the election, which is on a Tuesday. You check the website on Tuesday morning, the day of the election, and it hasn't gotten in yet. That means that your vote may not count. So you probably want to go to the polling place and make sure that you cast the ballot that day if you can. So bottom line is you need to make sure that you get your absentee ballots in there as soon as possible. For those of you who are 18 or older, has anybody here voted before or been with your parents or grandparents or anybody else to an election? No? All right. Well, this is a presidential election, so it's going to be super crowded. It's going to be a zoo. It's actually kind of fun to go in person on election day. There's going to be all kinds of people outside holding up signs for their candidates. There's probably going to be a little bit of a line. But it's really neat because you get to go in, and if you're already registered, you show your photo ID. You can use a student ID from Concord High School if you'd like. That counts as a photo ID in New Hampshire. And they will give you your ballot, and you go on your merry way inside the ballot booth, fill it out, hand it in, and you're done. Plus you get a sticker. So that's one way to do it. The other thing you can do is you can vote using an accessible online, or an accessible in-person voting machine. It's called the One for All system, and it's like voting with a tablet computer. So you ask to use the accessible system, and they will set you up in a big tent, and it's a tablet, so you can vote via touching the screen. It's got headphones, so if you're blind, it will read you the ballot if you want to do it that way, or if you know somebody that doesn't see very good or somebody who can't read, it'll read the ballot to you, and you can just hit the button and it will select your candidates. When you're done, prints out on the same ballot that everybody else uses, you turn it in, and you voted that way too. So I'd encourage anybody, if you're going to vote on election day in person, to use the accessible system. Yes, Ms. Hans?
So every polling place has one of those machines?
Every polling place has one of those machines for federal elections, and there's a new law that there are polling places, that all the polling places will have these machines for local elections too, which I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, every polling place has an accessible voting system. It's called the One for All. You don't have to have a disability to use it. A lot of times it's quicker to vote that way because you don't have to wait in line with everybody else to wait for a booth to open up. So it's really easy to do. Yes?
So in Concord, there's a lot of different places you can vote, right?
Right.
So if somebody lives in Concord, can they go to any of those places?
That's a very good question. If you live in Concord, you have to go to a specific ward that you live in.
So how do you know?
If you go to the Secretary of State's website, they have a big list. You just put in what your address is, and it'll tell you vote in Ward 2 or Ward 3, and it will give you the address of that location. The other thing you could do is you can call the city clerk, and you could say, I don't know where I'm going to vote. And she says, well, where do you live? You give her the address, and she'll tell you exactly where you go to vote.
Okay, good.
Did I see a question over here?
Yeah, it was actually, I was actually trying to answer the question, but you already said this, that the wards, it depends on where you live.
Right, right. So it's different parts of the city. So, and Concord's a little bit different too, because there's going to be a school board.
There's a lot of wards here, too.
I think there's-
It's like 12 or 13.
I think there's 10 wards, yeah. Yeah, and it goes all the way up from Pennacook to, almost to the, right to the Bow line. So, yeah, there's a bunch.
Good for you.
Every polling place has to be accessible. Does everybody know what accessible means? Does anybody know what accessible means?
Gosh, they answered me in today.
Accessible.
It means you're able to get there without problems.
Yes, you can get inside, so if you're in a wheelchair or some other way, there's not going to be any barriers, not going to be a big set of stairs or something like that, so you can't get inside. There's going to be plenty of parking, handicap parking outside. And, all right, so here's a question for you guys. Say you're planning on voting in person, the day before the election, you break your leg, you go to the hospital, they put a cast on you, and the polling place has a big set of stairs. What do? Can you still vote? Yes. And it's called curbside voting, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Somebody from the polling, one of the polling officials will come outside, they'll bring you the form to fill out, and you say, I can't make it inside because I got a, broken leg is a temporary disability. And they will bring out a ballot for you. You can fill it out, they'll bring it back in for you, and you can vote that way. So they try to make it as easy to vote and take away as many reasons that you would say, oh, I don't know if I can vote or not. In New Hampshire, they try to make it as simple as possible and open to everybody, because everybody's got a right to vote. If you're over 18, a citizen, and you live where you're going to be voting. Let's see. So when you're filling out your ballot, what happens if you make a mistake on your ballot? Say you want to vote for Captain Crunch, but you vote for Tony the Tiger instead. Do you know what you do? Can you get a new ballot? Yes, you can get a new ballot. So you can get one, you just give it to the clerk and say, I messed up, I need a new ballot, and they'll give you another one. What happens if you mess up on that one? Can you get a new one? Yes, you can. So say you screw up 2 ballots, you can still get a third one. Now, on this third ballot, you mess up on that one, can you get another one? No. 3 strikes and you're out, just like baseball. So on the third ballot, you need to be really, really careful. that you fill it out correctly. So take your time, because sometimes, you got to fill in little bubbles on there. So take your time, make sure that it's filled out correctly. And if you mess up on the third ballot, you have to decide if you want to put that ballot in to have it be counted, or if you just want to say, you know what, I screwed up, this vote's not going to count. I don't want my mistake counting as a vote for something that I don't want to vote for.
Can you just erase your mistakes?
No, all the ballots are filled out with pen. That's a good question. So a good place to look is online on the City of Concord's website. They have sample ballots up. And that's a very good point, because that is my next talking point, is to do some research on the candidates. It's not just the president that's up for election coming up. I'm sure everybody is sick and tired of seeing the ads on YouTube for these candidates. Does anybody know who else is running for office?
I'm sure. Didn't, if I remember, Biden dropped out.
Yes.
Kennedy dropped out.
Kennedy dropped out, yep. But aside from president, are there any other offices?
Let's see, I'm pretty sure New Hampshire has,
So Governor Sununu's not running again.
so there, yeah, there's a bunch of ads going around about that. I don't know their names, but I know it's the name, I think it's two going.
Yep. Yeah, Kelly Ayotte and Joyce Craig are the two candidates that are running for governor. And then there's also a race for Congress. And there's going to be a bunch of other races for the New Hampshire State House. So the people that run and work in the big Capitol building with the gold dome, they're going to be running for office this election cycle too. So it's really, if you guys have time, I'd really recommend before you go and vote, the best thing to do is to check out what the ballot looks like, get the names of the candidates, and do some research on these candidates. Because sometimes the candidates are kind of the same, sometimes they're really, really different, right? Last election cycle, we had somebody who wanted to ban TikTok and say, yeah, no, we're not going to use that in the United States anymore, we're going to get rid of it. And the other candidate said, no, we want to keep TikTok. Everybody likes using it. So there's a lot of differences, and I would, just urge people, don't believe campaign ads when you see them pop up on TV or on the internet. Be careful of what you read online, like on social media. I'm an old guy, so like Instagram is kind of what I use, but any other social media apps out there, just be very careful. Do your own research. There's a lot of good websites out there like Ballotpedia, sort of like Wikipedia, but for ballots. They have all the candidates listed, where they stand on issues, and it really helps you think about, okay, well, I like where this person, they have some good ideas for what we want to do in this country. So do some research before you go out and vote. And it's really easy to get a name of all the candidates and just look out and see what they have out there. But just, those campaign ads are pretty brutal. So just, don't trust those ads. They're not always 100% truthful. Whatever your grandpa or uncle or whoever posts on Facebook, a lot of times that stuff's not true either. So just, be very skeptical of something that somebody else wrote. There are some really good research opportunities out there too. Yes?
I think the most important thing is to know your cons.
Know the cons.
The cons outweigh the pros that are going to be going overhead.
Sure. So there are some.
Election might be a bit limited.
But your con could be someone else's pro.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's know where you think. So it's a good chance to think about, well, how do I feel about this issue? How do I feel about TikTok getting banned? How do I feel about, the Supreme Court? And you may not care, and that's fine. But there may be issues that you really do care about, and so you want to make sure that you do some research. You think about where you stand, and then you have a chance to vote for these candidates who are going to go and make laws to represent your voice. And that's really what it's important to do research. That's why it's important to do research. And, one of the last things I want to remind people to do is to make a plan to vote. So if you are 18 years old and you don't know if you're registered, step one, go to the Secretary of State's website, type your name in, your birthday. It'll say if you're registered or not. If you're not registered, our toolkit right here has all the steps you need to take. It's very easy to do to register to vote in New Hampshire. If you have any questions, feel free to call our office. I'd be happy to talk with anybody. I know I look young and handsome. I've been doing this for a while. I've been a lawyer for almost 15 years, so I know a lot about elections in New Hampshire, and I'm happy to answer anybody's questions that they have about voting ahead of time. Make a plan to vote. If you're not registered, get registered. If you are registered, make sure that you know how you're going to get to the polling place on election day. Figure out what ward in Concord you live in and how you're going to get there. And if you can't find transportation, give our office a call. We can give you different resources, or think about requesting an absentee ballot so you can vote by mail, or do that, vote at City Hall, get your ballot in before the election so you get it taken care of. So that's, it's really, really important to make a plan to vote. And the last thing I guess I'll talk about is just local voting. It's really important not just to vote this November, but because especially for those of you who are not 18 years old yet, local elections have big consequences. And the way I like to remind people of it is something called the Jaws theory. Has anybody seen the movie Jaws? Everybody's seen the movie Jaws, right? What's it about? A giant man-eating shark.
15 foot.
15 foot, yeah, great white shark. And so the shark comes and attacks some people at this vacation beach on Amity Island. And all the shark experts are saying, we got to close this beach down. It's going to come back. It's going to bite people again. It's going to attack people again. The mayor, who was elected in a local election, says, no, we're keeping the beach open. We need the tourists. We need people like to go to the beach. I don't care. We're keeping the beach open. So they do. And what happens?
They die.
A lot more people get eaten by sharks.
In the boat.
The concept of
Yep.
sharks is so twisted in this whole movie.
We can talk about the concept of sharks after this. So, I would love to talk to you about the concept of sharks. So, 4 years later, they made a sequel to Jaws called Jaws 2. It's not the same shark because the first one got exploded at the end of the movie, but in Jaws 2, guess what? It's the same mayor. He made all these terrible decisions to keep the beach open. People got killed, but nobody showed up in the local election to vote him out of office. And so he got reelected. So it's really, really important. Sometimes local elections can have big consequences. There's a lot going on. I'm sure you guys have heard about the middle school in Concord and all the issues with the school board and blah, 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 blah. But, that's important if you have younger siblings that are still in middle school. This is a lot of local stuff that can affect people quite a bit. So I would encourage people to make sure that you vote, not just in this election coming up, but in every election going forward. Yes?
So what happens when you get a ballot, there's a lot of names on it, right?
Yes.
And it tells you what the different people, like what they're being elected for. What if you get to one category and you say, I don't really, I did some research, but I don't really know these people. What do you do? Can you not vote for a category?
Sure. You can just skip a name on the ballot. That's easy enough to do. The other thing you can do is when you're doing your research, you can look at what the issues are that are important to you and figure out, okay, well, there's one political party, say the Republican Party. I like a lot of what they have to say. Or the Democratic Party. I like a lot of what they have to say. And the ballot will show which party the candidates belong to. And so that's one thing that people do is they just vote a straight ticket for either the Democratic or the Republican candidates. I would encourage people to do research because even if somebody belongs to a political party, they could have very different views than what you think they do. But if you're not sure and you don't feel comfortable voting for that person, you can leave it blank, or you can write in somebody else that you think would do a good job. So, for instance, when I was younger, I used to vote for Ken Jennings for president. And does anybody know who he is?
Jeopardy?
Yes, he won 74 games of Jeopardy in a row. And if you can win 74 games of Jeopardy in a row, you're probably smart enough to make decisions about how our country should be run. I was young, I didn't do my research, and I regret doing that. But you have the ability as a citizen to write in whoever you want to run for office. You could vote for Mickey Mouse if you really wanted to. It does not matter. But the important part is that you go out, you express your voice, you express your opinion, and you make your voice heard. That's about all I got. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to take them. If nobody does, thank you all for listening to me rant and rave about voting. Hopefully you get out of class for a little bit. And this was a little bit more entertaining. Yes?
I'm gonna be honest here, probably most of the students in here, the reason why they came in the first place was because they wanted to get into class, or because they wanted to know how to vote in general.
Well, hey, that's good. I'll take, you know,
I have a feeling that the majority of the students here wanted just to get out of class.
we could vote on that and figure out what the majority is.
Does
Yeah, we
anybody,
could do that.
does anybody here live in Deerfield? Anybody from Deerfield? Okay. Because, so if somebody, because we, you know, in our high school, we have Deerfield students.
Sure.
Do they vote the same way, and does the ballot look the same in Deerfield as it does in Concord?
So it's gonna look about the same. It's gonna
Other
be,
than the local people?
yeah, it's just gonna have different names on it for the local people running for the state house, the people that are gonna be working in Concord. But other than that, it's gonna have the same form on the ballot, the same names, you know, for the big offices, like the one for governor, for state representative, and for the president. So, you know, it's pretty much the same process no matter where you live in New Hampshire. So if you have friends that, you know, live in Deerfield and they don't know about where to vote, you can help them out. You can spread the word, say, hey, check out this cool toolkit, and you know, hopefully they'll vote too.
If I also remember, voting here in New Hampshire is actually very vital towards this kind of area, because we're considered to be a swing state, if I remember right.
We are a swing state. So there are, a lot of people think, well, I'm not going to vote. It doesn't matter. One vote doesn't count. There are a lot of races in New Hampshire for, especially the smaller offices, like the ones that, people that work in Concord, that are decided by like 10 or 20 votes. And, you know, if you decide not to vote,
Thank you very much.
that could swing it. That's enough. Because if you decide not to vote, there's probably other people that are going to decide, I don't really care. So that's why it's important to get everybody engaged and psyched up and ready to vote. Yes, sir.
Did you know in Australia it's illegal not to vote?
I think I've heard that. Yeah, so in Australia it's a little bit different. They have the day off for elections. It's like a national holiday. And there's some people in the United States that are pushing for that, to say, you know what, everybody should be able to vote on election day. We're going to give everybody the day off. So they'll make it like you know, like Christmas or New Year's or something like that.
Do you think the USA should make it illegal not to vote?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's somebody's choice whether or not they want to vote. I think if you don't vote, then you don't really have much of a right to complain about how things are, because you have a chance to exercise, you know, your voice on the issues and tell people empowered that, hey, the people that make the laws, no, you need to make them this way. We're going to send people to make these laws. If you don't do that and the government makes laws you don't like, you really can't complain, because you had a chance to try to change that, right?
Listen, it's pretty much like, thinking about it, it's pretty much like you have to pay a fine, and it's like, you don't want everybody in the US to pay a fine because they didn't vote.
Right. And you know, there are some people that, you know, don't pay attention and they're just going to vote. They're just going to say, okay, whatever, I'm done.
That might not be good either.
And that's, yeah, probably not good. We want people to be engaged. We want people to be excited about voting and to understand why it's important to vote. So like I said, you know, our phone number is on the back of these toolkits. So if you have questions about voting, or if you go home and you tell your folks or whoever that, you know, hey, I want to go vote, and they say, no, you're 18, but you're still not going to vote, give our office a call. We can help you out. And we'll make sure that, you know, you find a way to cast your ballot. So last thing, election is on November 5th, less than a month away. So make sure that you mark that on your calendars and that you get out there and exercise your voice. So thank you, everybody.